So alhamdulillah, Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, just wanted to ask you a question in terms of some people feel really down, and it's emotionally challenging, frustrating for others to say that there is no mosque this Ramadan. How am I going to fulfill my obligations? What advice would you give to anyone who has such thoughts, whether thinking that their Ramadan has been ruined due to COVID-19 pandemic?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Well, first of all, I would say that our religion is a religion that has a very interesting balance between the individual and between the community. In the West, individuality has been taken to a very, very extreme aspect of society, where the individual overrides the community, and so we see things that are very offensive to segments, sometimes large segments of the community, but because some of the people in the society want to do those things, everybody has to suffer that. Certainly pornography is a good example of that, or the type of advertisements and things that one sees just going out into the public. In the Muslim tradition, there's a great sense of respecting the community and the sensibilities of the community, but what you do in your own home is your own business. That's between you and God. Now, the other aspect, though, is that Riyā is a very serious sin in our tradition. It's called the hidden shirk, and this is why things like night prayers, and there are things that you do that other people don't know, and that is a way of protecting yourself from doing them for other people. So this is actually an opportunity to do things on your own that other people won't see. And this is why the Malikis consider it better in the home. That's one of the reasons that they consider it better in the home, is because it's between you and God, and there's nobody that sees you. And those are the acts that Allah loves the best, where it's just solely done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the other thing that, the intimacy, one of the things that a lot of modern people have a very difficult time understanding is just the intimacy with God and with the Quran. The Salaf said that the Quran to the early community, to the Sahaba, it was like love letters that their Lord had sent them, and so they would read them at night over and over again. Like people when maybe some of the people out there, when they were young and in love, and they wrote poems or they wrote love letters to their beloved, they would read them over and over again. And that's something out of intimacy. Intimacy is not for public display, and which is one of the reasons why in our tradition, idhar khushu' is makruh in the prayer, like to show too much khushu' when you're praying in public. That's actually makruh for that reason. So I think it's an opportunity for people to just be with their Lord. In many previous traditions, people fled to desert caves and things like that. I mean, the Hindus have the sadhu who goes off into the jungle just to get away from society, to get close to God. And the Christians had the anchorites. We have also, Awais al-Qarni is a very interesting character in our tradition, and Awais was one of these people. They said that he used to throw rocks if they tried to visit him in his cave, because he just didn't want to be bothered. So I think it's important for people to remember that there is that component of just being alone with your Lord and getting more comfortable with that. Obviously, that's easier for introverted people than it is for extroverted people. I'm an ambivert, so I have that ability to do both. Extroverted people tend to really need other people, and they thrive off other people's energy. And that is a fact of life. So there really are genuinely extroverted people that really need more communication and sociability, and that's understandable. And those people, it's far more difficult. Like I have a friend, he's a very prominent Christian scholar and a legal scholar, and he was telling me what a hard time he's having because he's such an extrovert. Whereas for me, this has been like such a blessing of just having a lot of time. So it's, you know, it's a very interesting thing. So I would just recommend that people really try to do things that connect them more, especially the Quran, reading the Quran. If you don't know Arabic, getting a good translation and really being able to connect with the Quran Ramadan is for the Quran. And then a really important thing is just exercise. Like people have to physically exercise, because one of the main reasons why there's so much mental illness and depression is because people do not move their bodies. And we believe in the bodily resurrection. So our prayer is a physical prayer. There's actually, I mean, we don't want to say this, but there is an exercise component to our physical prayer. Like you're really doing something that is very healthy for your body by praying 5 times a day in the way that we pray. So obviously that's not the purpose, but that's a side benefit of the prayer. Getting up throughout the day is very important. But so I would say people should walk. We're still allowed to walk outside to exercise. Walking is really important, especially if you live near green places, to get out. The Japanese have a word for what they call forest bathing, which is actually to go out into nature and to take like a spiritual bath. And the Quran, when it describes the servants of the merciful, it says, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. And also the Prophet said, بَشَّرْ الْمَشَّائِينَ بِالظُّلَمِ, you know, بِالنُّورِ التَّامِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Like, tell the people that walk often in the darknesses to having complete light on the day of judgment. So walking devotionally is actually very important. And there are certain shuyukh that, like in Mauritania, a lot of the shuyukh do all their dhikr walking. So they actually go and just recite Quran when they're walking. It's interesting that in Buddhism they have sitting meditation, they have walking meditation. They say that the sitting meditation for people like to sit, and walking meditations for people like to walk. So you can take a subha or just go out and just walk and do some dhikr and still your mind and calm your soul. Those are very beneficial things for people to do. And you know, the human body is designed to at least walk between 8,000 and 12,000 steps a day. And it will work optimally if you do that. Most people are walking under 3,000 steps a day now in Western society. And the mortality rate goes down 51% by people that walk over 8,000 steps a day with all diseases like cancer, everything. So there have been really amazing studies about the importance of walking. And so I would really encourage that. And one of my teachers, Murabit Muhammad al-Amin, once told me that there's an Arab proverb, al-harwalatu dawa'un la yuqti, that a brisk walking is a cure that will never fail. Mm-hmm. And when he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, they wanted to put him on medication. He said, no, I'm just gonna walk every day more than I usually do. And he did, and his sugar regulated. So walking is very, very beneficial, and people need to do that. It's very important.
Shaykh Hamza, you mentioned that how the time of coronavirus can be considered as
your voice went out.
Ourselves, but also
your voice went out. I tried to read your lips, but I wasn't getting everything. So could you just repeat that? Sorry.
So Shaykh Hamza, you mentioned how we can use this as an opportunity to spiritually fulfill ourselves, but also to become mentally resilient. And I just wanted to bring another issue to your attention. We, as imams in the UK, are receiving lots of calls from sisters who are saying that now husbands are staying at home and there are issues at home because perhaps couples haven't had the opportunity to live together, and coronavirus has forced people to live together, and that's resulting in domestic abuse, emotional stress. And as well as perhaps on occasions I have had to deal with like talaq issues as well. Now, where would you go when you are actually confined to your home? So what advice would you give to the Muslim community regarding, not just in respect of this period, but overall?
Sure. I mean, first of all, domestic violence is haram in Islam. To beat a woman is haram. The verse in Surah An-Nisa, verse 34, that the verse in there is very clear in the commentaries. It's very clear that has nothing to do with violence. That any physical act of violence against a woman, or don't forget, women actually are also abusive. About close to 30% of all domestic violence in America is women actually against men. So men are also abused physically, and a lot of men, and I'm one of them, because I've never hit a woman, and like I grew up learning that you do not hit women, and so there are men who actually will be their wife or their spouse or whoever will get violent with them, and they won't fight back. And ER doctors know this because they've seen men who come to ER with boiling water had been poured on them when they were sleeping or something like that because of some of these domestic disputes. So it's not just the women, but the majority, undeniably, the majority of around 66% in the US, I don't know what the stats are in the UK, are women. So the majority of victims of domestic violence are women. And unfortunately, even murders that are spousal, they're usually perpetrated the man against the woman. So this is a human problem. It's been a problem for a very, very long time. What people should fear God and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is over them. And even in the verse in Surah An-Nisa, it reminds people that Allah is over them immediately after that, for that very reason. So, I just, no woman should feel insecure in her home. No woman should have that feeling. The house in Arabic, the word in Arabic is maskan, which is the place of sakina. And the Quran, when it talks about in Surah Ar-Rum, when it talks about the reason why God created the man and the woman, one of the reasons was litaskunu ilayha, that you find tranquility in your spouse. And so there should be sakina in the home. And if there's not, that home is not practicing the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know that the Prophet never raised his hand to hit a woman, a child, or a servant. And that's in the hadith. So the sunnah of the Prophet is never to raise his hand against a woman, a child, or a servant. And if you're doing that, you're not following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So I would just remind people of that. I mean, one of the interesting verses in the Quran in Surah Maryam, where Mary, when the Annunciation happens and she sees the angels, she seeks refuge in Allah, and then she says, in kunta taqiyya, if you have taqwa. I mean, when you're in a situation like if the person has an ounce of piety in their heart and that woman reminds them, that should be something that stops them from doing that. But women have a right to be safe and secure in their homes. And I would just add to this, and this is a very important component, understand that your husbands right now are probably in there's anxiety, There's concern about, you know, their jobs, where they're going. These are all real, and they create an immense amount of mental stress. And so it's very important that a woman understand that, especially if she's being provided for generally by that husband. I mean, sometimes both spouses are working, and that's a very different situation. But when the husband is the main provider for the household, it's very important that the woman really help him in that as his partner, and just be a source of solace for him. And because some relationships, you can have, unfortunately, people that are always complaining, or they just goad the person, or they push buttons, you know, as they say in modern parlance, you know. And some spouses, whether it's male or what push to get a certain reaction from the husband or the wife. So, oh, you're just like your mother, or oh, you're just like your father. And then that just sets them off. And so it's very important that we get out of, these are called the games people play. You know, it was a book back in the 60s about that. These kind of, R.D. Laing wrote a book called Knots, you know, about the psychological knots that people get wrapped up in. We have to break these patterns. We're human beings, we're intellectual and spiritual beings, and we have the capacity to break patterns. And this is very important. And I'll just give you one example from my own life to drive this home. Years ago, you know, I had one of my sons was very slow, and it was hard to get him out, and we had karate lessons, you know, and so they had to go, and it was actually Taekwondo, but he was late, and I got upset with him, and I really let him have it, not physically, and I looked at him, and I saw myself with one of my own caregivers when I was younger. And I realized that I was doing, it was the tapes of my youth being replayed on him. And I literally drove back home and just told him, we're going to start over. And I did it differently. So I broke that tape. And so these are things that people can do. Very often domestic violence comes out of people who grew up in houses that had domestic violence. And so they're repeating the patterns of the past. And the important thing to note is that if you're a believer, then you have to recognize that mujahada is fighting the impulses of the negative impulses of yourself. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. That if you struggle, this mujahada, if you struggle, God will guide you. But if you're not struggling with yourself, and so if somebody, you know, if you get into a situation, you have to immediately stop yourself, or take some breaths, or just do certain things. The Prophet ﷺ, he would always go to prayer. So that's something you do. If you're feeling really angry, I guarantee you, if you go and do wudu and you pray 2 rakats, it's going to have a major impact on your mental state, and it will subside. But you have to do these things. They're difficult things to do, but they are things that the human being is more than capable of doing. But this is mujahada.
Great. Jazakallah khair. Share another aspect, whether it's like spiritual vacuum or social issues or mental issues, we are not alone as Muslim community that facing these challenges. And it was very moving and inspirational to see that last week the Alliance of Virtue statement of solidarity signed by faith leaders from across the traditions, saying we are united in fighting the coronavirus pandemic, but also united in helping each other. And Ramadan being the month when Muslims showcase empathy and Muslims reach out to others. Would you like to elaborate on how the Prophet ﷺ spent the month of Ramadan in terms of being charitable, not just to people far afield, but actually in their neighborhoods?
Right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, first of all, it's very important to remember that, you know, the world, there's a lot of people on this planet. There's over 7 billion now, and the Muslims have a large portion. We've got about 1/5 of that population. of varying degrees of commitment to the faith. That's undeniable. But there are a lot of Muslims on this planet. Now we're all over. We're in England, we're in Canada, we're in France, we're in Germany, we're in Spain, Italy, America. So Islam is not a geographical designation anymore. The Ummah is a global Ummah. There's over, I think there's close to 50,000 now, 50 million Muslims in Western Europe. There's several million. We're actually finding out with the census now how many Muslims. So it's important that Muslims, the Quran says, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You were the best community that came out for humanity. It doesn't say li anfusikum or lil Islam, or no, you're the best community that came forth for humanity. And so it's very important that we remember that this community is a community that serves not just ourselves, but humanity, that we're concerned about humanity. And this has been the hallmark of our faith. When the Irish, the great potato famine in the 1840s in Ireland, it was the Caliph, Abdul Majid in Turkey, who sent shiploads of aid to Ireland to relieve the Irish people of their suffering. He didn't do that as propaganda because it was actually not to their benefit, because the British did not want that, and they had much stronger interests in having good alliance with England than with Ireland. But they snuck that aid into Ireland to help the Irish people, and there are still places in Ireland where they remember that. So, you know, and also one of the great famines in France in the late 18th century, the Algerians had bumper crops that year, and they sent aid from Algeria to France. So there are times when Muslims were aiding the non-Muslims. Now, unfortunately, it's the opposite very often because of our conditions. But Muslims historically were people that really looked beyond themselves. They were not provincial in that way. They saw themselves as caretakers and stewards of humanity. You know, something in Christian theology they call it oikonomia, you know, the stewardship. It's, you know, the khilafah, you know, being good stewards of the earth and of humanity. So it's very important that Muslims just remember that. And we have many very decent rabbis and very decent Christians and that share many things with us. And then also the great world religions share many of the virtue traditions that we do. And I would say now, particularly with the Hindu crises, it's very important that we can't allow what's happening in India to collectivize Hindus. It's very important, and I'm actually really concerned about this because of some of the things that fanatical Hindus are doing. We, just like we do not want to be demonized by what some of our extremists do to other people, and so we all get collectively associated with those extremists, we cannot do that to the Hindu peoples because many of the Hindus, especially those who understand their religion, are troubled by the riots and by these attacks on Muslims and on their sacred places. So it's very important that we understand that every religion suffers from extremism, but we cannot collectivize people. We have to see people as individuals. You know, every Muslim, you know, what Dr. King said, you know, we want people judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Well, we also want them judged by the content of their character, not by their sociological label of being a Muslim or a Hindu or a Jain or a Buddhist or whatever you are. That we really cannot collectivize people. All white people are evil because they're Europeans and they colonize the world. All this is so alien to the Islamic tradition. لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. No soul bears the sins of another soul. Don't collectivize people.
لا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. So Shaykh Hamza Yusuf mentioned how that during this period, when unfortunately in some places people are saying, well, because Ramadan is coming, the Muslims are going to gather together either to pray or to break fast, and as a result coronavirus is going to spread. So when we hear such negative news, it's just bearing in mind that our faith is a faith of mercy, trying to reach out to people to help them understand what our faith teaches us. Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, sometimes when you say words of thanks, they can be superficial, but we are deeply thankful to, first of all, one of the leading scholars of our era, Fadilatul Shaykh Abdullah bin Bia, who's a true who's truly building bridges between communities. And Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, being the vice president of the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Societies, have done amazing work that will be remembered for decades in terms of how we are building bridges between communities because we are all in it together. So Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, I'd just like to ask you to remember us all in your prayers, and if you could just pray for us that during this month of Ramadan, which is very unforgettable, it's going to be an unforgettable experience, how we return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reconnect with Allah and also our shared humanity.
Yeah, mashallah. These are unprecedented times. As far as I can tell, I don't think ever in human history there has been a situation like this. So people that are young, like yourself, your grandchildren, may Allah give you a long life, they're going to say, you lived through the COVID-19. So these are historical and unprecedented times in human history. And we're all navigating new waters. Shaykh Abdullah bin Baya comes out of a classical Islamic tradition. He's not a modernist. He's somebody who really is rooted in the classical tradition, but he is somebody who believes in tajdeed and believes in ijtihad. But he's not a modernist. He's a traditionalist. And so it's very important to understand that we are obliged by our religion to obey the people in authority, and this is something that's very important, because the negative consequences of not doing that ends up creating much more human suffering. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-mu'minu la yudhillu nafsah," that a believer should not humiliate himself. They asked him, how does he humiliate himself? And he says, يَتَعَرَّضُ لِلْبَلَاءِ مَا لَا يُطِيقُ, to expose themselves to a tribulation or a trial that they can't bear. And Ahmed Zarruq said one of the best examples of that is opposing government, and then the government humiliating and abasing you because of that. So these are important aspects of the religion. I mean, we do have a tradition of truth, speaking the truth to unjust tyrants, and those are very important aspects of the tradition, and that's undeniable. That's the role of the scholars. Ahmed ibn Hanbal said it should be done in private. So those are important. We can't deny that. Being silent in the face of injustice is also can be a crime for some people. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah bless you. Like I said, the imams online, you guys were ahead of the curve, because now all the imams are online. But may Allah bless you for your foresight in creating this forum and recognizing the importance now of the global community. We don't have the type of scholarship that we used to have in the numbers that we used to have, but we do have people like Shaykh Abdullah bin Baya, who, as somebody who's been working with him closely for going on more than 25 years, I can attest to just the vastness of his scholastic knowledge, but also the depth of his spiritual training. His father was a great sheikh and a spiritual master as well, Sheikh Mahfoud, Sheikhna Mahfoud. And the sheikh is, he's very humble, like you said, and people sometimes, because he's like that, they don't realize what's in front of him. But I mean, I just call him Ghazali or Zamanihi. He really is the Ghazali of his time. And one of the things that the Arabs say, and the Sufis in particular say this, they say that al-mu'asara, is like contemporaneity, like living at the same time as a person. is a type of hijab. You know, it's something that you're veiled by the people of your time. So people, you know, when Malcolm was alive, people just, it was just, you know, for a lot of people, wasn't a big deal for them. But when you lose those great people, it's the later people who realized who they were. So very often that people living at the same time don't acknowledge that. And that's how I view Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayya, is that people really, a lot of people have just missed him completely because they don't understand who he is and what he's trying to do, and the sincerity that is very evident to me and the people who work with him and around him, not to mention the many karamat that we've seen at his hands. And the Arabs say al-qurbu hijab, that being too close to somebody also can veil you from who they are. So, you know, may Allah open our eyes and our inner sights, and may we see the people of our time for who they are and respect them. Our religion is a religion of hierarchy. We believe in the equality before the law. Everybody's equal, should be equal before the law, but we don't believe in this idea somehow that everybody's the same. It's a very dangerous modern concept. Sayyidina Ali said, قِيمَةَ الْمَرْءِ فِي مَا يُحْسِنُهُ. The value of a human being is what they do with ihsan. And هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Are they the same, those who know and those who don't know? And this is why civility can only come about from hierarchy, because when everybody's equal, there's no basis for civility. There's no basis for adab. You say, oh, we treat everybody the same. Well, then you've lost adab, because when you have a hierarchy, you have basically duties. So the duty of an elder is to have compassion on the younger, and the duty of the younger is to have respect for the elder. This is why in your language, now you speak a very nice English, but in your the language of your parents and your ancestors.
I do speak Urdu as well, Sheikh.
I know, but they have a whole way of speaking. If somebody's older, you actually have to put a suffix on the word. You know, like you wouldn't just say Asim, you'd say Asim Bhai, you know, or something like that, to show that respect. Those things are being lost on modern peoples. If you have a white beard, you're supposed to be treated with certain respect, just because you've lived that long on the earth. And so the Prophet said, "Laysa minna man la yuwaqqir kabirana wa la yarham saghirana." He's not from us the one that doesn't show respect for our elders or compassion for our youth. So this is very important to remember, that we really have to restore in our community a type of recognition, you know, that people, umirtu an unazzil an-nas manazilahum, which is not to belittle people, especially it's not about poverty, because some of the people that deserve the most respect are some of the poorest people in the world. And I've seen them. Some of the greatest scholars that I've ever known in my life were people that lived in huts in West Africa. So it's not about richness and wealth. It's about piety and knowledge. And these are the hallmarks of our faith that the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna hadar Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu, Inna hadar Quran yarfa'u unasan wa yada'u akharin. This book elevates some people and abases others. It elevates the people of knowledge and it abases the people of ignorance. So knowledge is really something that we have to respect. And the ijtihad of the people of knowledge, we might not understand it because we don't have the scope of their vision or their perspective. And so it's very important to also to have just a good opinion about people, you know, because there are people that attack Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayya and they don't understand that he's working on a whole other level in terms of ijtihad. And I was once with him in a car, and I'll end with this. I was once with him in a car, and there was a scholar from his own community who was attacking him online and writing articles, you know, and he said it was troubling him. And there was somebody in the car who said to him, Sheikh, don't worry, he can't harm you, he can't do anything bad. He said, no, I wasn't thinking about myself, I was thinking about him. You know, like he was troubled about him, like that's you know that's where he was, you know, spiritually, just attacking other people.
Yeah, that's a true sign of a wali in terms of being caring towards others. And alhamdulillah, I mean, what's amazing, truly inspiring about Shaykh Abdullah bin Bia is that he's a classic jurist, but at the same time, doesn't shy away from tackling the challenges of his time using the modern phenomena. You know, so today is a real example of how, you know, using technology, Imam's online platform brought together in partnership with Peace Forum, with Sandala, and being able to, you know, really communicate with the people that he wants to connect with. So what's truly amazing about Shaykh Abdullah bin Bia is that he is someone who can very easily connect with a layperson, if I may say so, as well as those who are in positions of leadership, whether it's scholarship or political leadership, and that's why we see that he's really emerged as a true scholar of Islam who's presenting this inner peace as well as the outer peace. That's the essence of Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve Shaykh Abdullah bin Bia and help us to learn from the wisdom that he so much of, you know, he distributes and promotes, alhamdulillah. Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, once again, you know, really grateful from the global team, from the UK, from the Maghreb, from UAE, as well as the USA. Jazakallah khair. Remember us in your du'as, and especially the global team that has brought us together.
Zishan Zafar, because I know he worked very hard, and Aisha Subhani and the others that worked hard, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Barakallah fikum wa karamukum Allah, inshallah. May Allah increase you, elevate you. May Allah protect you and your loved ones. May Allah protect all those that are watching, inshallah, all of you and your loved ones. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this really the best Ramadan. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a time that we get close to Allah in these difficult times and circumstances. May Allah bring sakina to the homes of the believers. May Allah protect our women wherever they are. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, put just love of the Quran back into the hearts of this ummah, not just to recite it, but to actually practice its principles and to live by its dictates. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, give shahada to all those doctors and nurses that have died in this event. We had a Muslim doctor in Wales that succumbed to the corona. May Allah bless him and his family and give them sakina, inshallah. The Prophet said that you know, that there's 7 in a riwayah 5, but in a sahih riwayah there's 7 types of shahada, martyrdom, after the shahada defending your homeland. And one of them, the first one he mentioned, was al-mat'un, the person who dies in an epidemic. And Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani said that the person who dies in an epidemic is exactly the same maqam as it's the only one that shares the same maqam as a person who died defending the homelands of the Muslims. So that's really important to remember, that that these people are shuhada. We still bury them in a normal way, but they're shuhada. They're hum ahya'un 'inda rabbihim yurzaqun. لا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم. So they're living in a better place. So جزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Thank you to all our panel members as well as the viewers for joining us through this platform, Imams Online, promoting peace, forum for promoting peace, as well as Sandala have brought this to you. Jazakallah khair.